Today, I believe, is when it was reported that the DC prosecutor who had impaneled a grand jury that was investigating declassified documents for Trump, which had to open a separate grand jury in Florida to be able to access the jurisdiction for Trump and those documents, that the DC grand jury, upon which all the other grand juries had been based, had been ended. This follows an order by a Southern District of Florida federal judge to the prosecutor, Jack Smith, that he explained the legal propriety of using an out-of-district grand jury to provide evidence for other grand juries retroactively added. And in response, he shut her down. What this, I believe, means is that any indictments based on evidence from the DC grand jury brought into other districts is going to have to be thrown out. And at that point, what case is there? And if it ever does go to trial, or if there has to be a case brought by the judge against the prosecutor for legal improprieties, it will go to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is, among others, there are semi-retired judges on this. Clarence Thomas could end up being the judge that rules on a case brought by Judge Eileen Cannon from SDFL against Jack Smith. That is real news. This is not some QE rumor shit. This is real news. And it nonetheless constitutes a legitimate boom. So, I will now speculate based on some of the things that I have seen in the news, assuming that these may be real or there is something false to it or whatever, but some of these are just simply reportings of events. It seems that Sidney Powell has surrendered. There is a mugshot on the way, they said. So here's the thing. In order for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals to come into jurisdiction of this case, to become involved, will definitely require an appeal or a recommendation to the higher court, right? This may be where Mark Meadows is going to, since they said to a federal, or if they bring it to federal, is this the Atlanta case? Is this this is all 11th Circuit up to DC. That whole Atlantic coast of the South states is the 11th Circuit. Their court is located in Atlanta. I've done some looking. It's Wikipedia knowledge, but this is not something that I would question. They're located in Atlanta. Clarence Thomas is among the available judges. There are 12 seats, but also semi-retired judges. If Sidney Powell gets her mugshot out there, Narc baits them, strokes their ego, lets them do their whole, oh, look at us, we're the cock of the walk, ooh, and then takes it to 11th Circuit, where the entirety of it is dropped and ruled improprietary, and then some type of sanctions or disbarments occur of all of these prosecutors. Not to mention, in Atlanta already, their state legislature is impeaching the district attorney, the Fannie Willis or whatever, that brought the Atlanta charges. It is clear from the entirety of the phone call, which I have heard, that Trump had with Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger. Raffensperger is a turd. Kemp's like Tim Reynolds in Iowa here, just a state governor who did not really think they were going to end up getting involved in this shit, and really would prefer to stay out of it, but can't help it because politics is a game. At least as far as I can tell. Kemp's not like the worst, but he sure ain't great. So the problem is Kemp, as a Republican, needs to be fair about the law. But what it needs to be is that this situation in his state should have been addressed. There ended up being a lawsuit by a person, a private citizen, who had the money in their retirement, cashed it out, and spent the legal fees to get Freedom of Information Act requests, to get specific batches from specific times according to the records kept for the counting of the night, where on video, people were seen pulling things out from under a table, running them through, shuffling them, running them through again all night for a couple hours. And there was one of those little spiky line, like the meme. Those were found. There was a press conference. After the press conference happened, the judge ordered, in that case, that the press conference footage be taken off the internet, and also that all of the evidence and information, which was, photocopies that were sent out based on the Freedom of Information Act request, be rescinded. They were forced to give everything back, and the case was dismissed before any ruling could be made. Now, was it improper of the person to bring it out? Possibly, but here's the thing. People needed to see. People needed to know. And the few of the press who gathered at that conference were astonished by what they saw. So Trump called the governor and said, hey, I heard about this thing. I want you to find those ballots. I want to see them. We have to find out if that really happened or if that's some BS. That's what the phone call was about. Trump was not the most articulate about it, but he was in his bully aggressive mode on the phone with a lesser man in Brian Kemp. Brad Raffensperger, however, is a player in the game, and he did everything he could to prevent anyone from getting access to or finding out the truth about the election night in Atlanta. Now, if Sidney Powell goes to court over this because of her Kraken thing, this involves that, and that means discovery. They don't want that, so they will find a way to get other things cut or dropped so that there can be no evidence brought, simply the accusation of. And if the judge in the lower level, if it doesn't get kicked to federal court, if the state judge is a Democrat appointee or is ruling in favor of that political ideology, then Sidney Powell will be convicted. It will immediately go to appeal, and within 6 months or a year or something, depending on where the court's at, how quickly they decide to hear it, this generally conservative ruling 11th Circuit Court of Appeals comes into play. And ultimately the Supreme Court, which at this time has a 4-3, or 5-4 or 6-3 conservative majority. And several of those judges, while being appointed by Trump, may not rule specifically for him because it is Trump kind of thing. But in the case of something like this, if there is demonstrated that there is no legal basis for a lawsuit to be, or for a crime to be charged, and nonetheless indictments were given, that is a legal impropriety and unlawful case by the state. There could be sanctions, disbarments, who knows? If the courts work the way they are designed to. And at this point, it seems like that is what it is. This judge, Cannon, and hat tip to Neil Johnson for being the first one to say anything about it. Anything about it was Neil Johnson. His closing this grand jury means no further indictments can be brought unless they try and come up with a new thing. I think the new deal now is going to be pandemic scare. People are going to stay inside. They're going to want to do their mail-in ballots. Or that won't work. We'll see. I think this is a big deal. I think this undermines a lot of the serious indictments. I think it'll cut down the time immensely, and I think between the RICO case brought in the state of Georgia being something that will go up to a court of appeals that ultimately leads to the 11th Circuit, or the Florida and DC cases being, there's still the J6 case, but that's a First Amendment thing that I don't know where it'll go in the 13th Circuit, which is DC. I don't know anything about that circuit yet. Apparently I'm going to have to bone up on who's where and what their history of rulings are for a while here, so I can kind of figure out where this is likely to go. And then I can provide a better speculatory divination, call it. So that's what I got for this one. This is good not for a, yay, Trump's gonna win. It's not like that. It's not like that. I fear for our rights. You should fear for our rights. If you don't, there's something wrong there. Right? To say, hey man, I got a question about that to the government. If you can't question the government, you are being ruled over, not governed. That's not how it's supposed to work here. The rules say so. The law is the Constitution. That's not how it works. So, any legal victory in these cases for the defendants is a victory for you and your rights, whether you like it or not, because it's Trump. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. Understand that victories for them against the state in these cases are victories for you and I.